This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hello and welcome to HealthLink, a program connecting home, community, and healthcare. My name is Carol Merton, and today I'm delighted to welcome as a guest to the program Kathryn Forsyth, who is a public health dietitian at Grey Bruce Public Health. Kathryn, thank you for joining me today. It's been a little while as we were chatting before the program started. I am so keen to hear what you have to say, as always, but your topic title is Healthy Eating for Healthy Aging, and my understanding it's Nutrition Month, March. So thank you for joining us.
Great, thanks. Nice to be here. So
I know you have your questions that you sent to me, and I think it's great. So why don't we start first with, Nutrition Month and what it means, why it's called Nutrition Month, and what the theme is for 2025.
Sure. It comes around every year in March. I've been doing it for over 40 years, this Nutrition Month gig, so it's not something new. But this year's theme is Nourish to Flourish. And I think it is a beautiful theme that really applies to anyone, anywhere, trying to do the best they can with what they have access to. Because we know these times, it's not easy to afford groceries, to access all the cultural foods we want. So I really like that it was broad enough to say, okay, how is everyone going to approach food going forward in these unsettling times, and really see what does it take to thrive, not just survive, right? Supporting all those facets, not just the food we eat, but the mental health component, the emotional health component, and the sociocultural component, because they're all important to well-being.
I mean, we're all of that as individuals and in our communities. We're all of those factors that you mentioned, so it's so critical. So speaking about those well-being issues, we're in a time of anxiety and stress for many people around tariffs, and we've heard a lot in the recent weeks about tariffs and the importance of supporting local, and that really applies to food choices. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about how Canadians can flourish and also support local.
Yeah, excellent thoughts there, and it is an important one. And we've always been supportive of saying, let's support local economies and suppliers and producers. But when things like this happen on a global scale, you start realizing just how important that is. And I think if we understand that all the processed packaged food in the world comes from about 10 companies, and how global transnational corporations have turned food into widgets and commodities, we really need to start taking a step back and saying, how can we control our food supply? Not everyone has a yard to grow their own food in, but if you can take back more control, support your local growers, eat more seasonally. I think as consumers, we need to stop demanding that we have all this fresh produce all year long. That's not how Mother Nature intended it when you're living north of the 49th parallel. So let's just work with Mother Nature a little bit more than against her, and try to take some of the commodifying out of food, but get to know the people who grow it in your local area, support those farmers markets and those roadside stands that are going to be popping up come the spring if the snow ever melts, and just really appreciate food for the bringing together of community and supporting local community. Tariffs are going to be what they'll be, and they keep changing. And I think we just don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So let's just deal with what we can control and look a little more local.
Well said. What I'm hearing you say, as well as looking local, is have an appreciation for the abundance we already have, and to start to build on that abundance. At times in stress and anxiety, it's so easy to get caught up in those negatives, but we are so fortunate, especially here in Grey Bruce, to have a lot of land and a lot of ability to grow things.
Absolutely. I mean, Ontario grows over 150 varieties of fruits and vegetables, and much more than that. So it's not like we're going to have to go without. But I do think the turnip may reclaim its place as an important vegetable for people. And it's my hope that people rediscover some of those, what your grandmother fed you, instead of having to have leafy greens and exotic things from around the world. Let's celebrate what is growing here. And I think that takes us back to Indigenous peoples and land sovereignty and saying this is what Mother Nature is providing, the harvest, the food, the animals, the plants. Let's enjoy and, I don't know, celebrate what is here.
Exactly. And before we go on to the other questions, the other part is to remember those who came before us and what they did around food and survival. Things like storing food. What were the storage techniques? There's a lot of things we can do to remember and make it current, of course. But I think of many ways that even in my time growing up, canning and pickling and using food storage cellars that were cool to help food last longer. And I'm thinking, there's some lessons to be learned in this.
Right. And that's part of that sociocultural well-being, that generations, it was your grandparents that passed down those traditional recipes, food preserving techniques. I remember making sauerkraut with my grandparents, right? That was an annual thing. Again, cabbage, underutilized vegetable for sure. So we need to tap into that and allow people to come together around those food and cultural traditions to pass that knowledge on, as well as the appreciation for what you do have.
Exactly. So we know how important nutrition is, but it supports growth, physical health, performance, and disease prevention across the lifespan. And can you elaborate a little bit about that? And I'm very interested in across the lifespan for seniors. We have a larger proportion of seniors in Grey Bruce. So, often nutritional aspects, we think of that for strong bones and growing, but it's equally important for seniors as they age as well.
For all age groups. If you have to start at the beginning, pregnancy, one of the first spots where you're laying the ground tissue, basically, for the future of that human. So, pregnancy, infancy, and adolescence are the three biggest growth phases in your life. So you need to have proper nutrition coming in at those times. Then if you've laid that groundwork down as you age into adulthood and beyond, that's when you're going to reap the rewards or pay the price for what you did in those younger years. So, we can't start worrying about it when we retire. You need to be thinking about this far sooner. You can only lay bone tissue down till around age 26. So past that, if you're not consuming calcium or taking a calcium supplement, your body is going to have to pull it out of your bones, and that will increase risk. So things like that, if people can see it for what it's worth across the lifespan, really important. And it's never too late, but you want to do as much groundwork beforehand. And then I think in the more senior years, it's about adequate energy coming in. We don't want the tea and toast diet with no good protein and iron sources. You need to fuel your brain and body every day, stay well hydrated for balance and muscle strength so you don't fall. And if you do fall, hopefully then your muscles and your bones are going to be strong enough to withstand that. And you're not going to break a hip and end up in the hospital. So it's something that is important right on through. Food is our fuel, right? And it's not as simple as that, but you can't drive a car without gas. You're not going to run a human body well without eating.
And that's a really good analogy. And you talked about investing early on, and you referred to it, certainly calcium for bone health. It really is a long-term investment, what you do in the early days. You get to reap the rewards of that investment. You also mentioned about proteins and as people age. So sometimes as people age, their appetites may change, and they may be more apt to just do the easy tea and toast. What would your advice be around protein intake and any of the other nutritional needs as people cycle age, other than tea and toast, because that's not what, that's not where we're going.
Well, and that can be part of a healthy diet. I love a good tea and toast, but the point is you need all the food groupings covered. And in the new food guide, you've probably seen the plate version. Half that plate is fruits and vegetables for the vitamins, minerals, fiber, and carbohydrate energy. A quarter of that plate is whole grains, again, for carbohydrate and vitamins, fiber. And then you have a quarter of the plate being the protein sources. That's all your meat and alternatives, milk and alternatives, as well as legumes, kidney beans, chickpeas, lima beans, and tofu products. All of those protein sources, take your pick. You can be a vegetarian, you can be a meat lover, or you can be a flexitarian and have a little bit of both. But you need a source of protein coming in because it maintains your lean muscle mass, heals any wounds. If you've had surgery, you're going to need more protein and iron for surgery or for healing those surgeries. So it's nothing, you just can't do without it. You need to get it in there, but it can be simple as a boiled egg or a little bit of chili with meat and beans in it. You don't have to be eating that 10-ounce steak anymore, which thank goodness we're not doing because that's a little too much of a good thing. And I know we have a lot of good beef farmers in the area. So yes, red meat, fabulous source of iron and protein, but palm of your hand or less at a time. And you need to make room for other choices in there. And if we want to be environmentally conscious, we have to think of the impact of growing food on the planet. And they are recommending we consume more plant-based proteins because they are less of an impact on the planet.
And that's really helpful. You basically mix it up, get the variety. And thinking about the plate divided is really easy. Like wherever you are, wherever you go, if you think of that image, it travels with you. So I think that's really good. So we're moving on. There were some questions you sent me that just captured my attention big time. And that's about the role that nutrition plays for mental well-being in mood, focus, cognitive function, and performance. And so I'm very interested in what you have to say about nutrition in those areas.
Yes, the old adage, you are what you eat, I think really comes through on this one. So we know eating is good for physical health and preventing disease, but it is also being shown more and more through research to be linked to good mental health. Heart and Stroke just released a report all about ultra-processed foods. And ultra-processed foods are anything that those 10 big food companies are making in a big manufacturing warehouse, putting in a package and sending out to the grocery store. So any of those foods tend to have more fat, sugar, salt added in, and we don't have the fiber left in a lot of those foods that really is what they're showing through research connected to better mental health through decreased anxiety, emotional distress, or depression. So when you can eat more whole foods with higher fiber content, you will be less anxious, less depressed, and have less emotional distress. And that makes a lot of sense to me when you see what people are really using as more of their diet. And in that report from Heart and Stroke, they share that almost 50% of the calories people consume, the energy we get out of food, is coming from those ultra-processed foods, which are convenient. Absolutely, they're quick and easy out of the freezer into the microwave, but they don't have that fiber content left or enough of the real nutrients that are there to help our bodies function properly. So I think the goal is going to be for people to try to decrease their reliance on those convenience foods. That's snack foods, frozen foods, fast food, anything that is quick and easy. There's a price to be paid beyond the convenience, and we're seeing that in the health of Canadians.
That is absolutely fascinating. The fiber then component is absolutely critical. You're talking about it in relation to food, but often we hear of people who have challenges with their gut motility and just things, the basics of nature and nature movement. So certainly I'd look to you to speak to that, but also is a fiber supplement as good as the fiber in real food?
Well, when you're asking a dietitian, we're always going to say eat the real food to get the fiber. But if you can't consume enough or can't tolerate those certain foods, then absolutely a fiber supplement may be the way to go. We have to remember our bodies are such a fine-tuned scientific instrument. We really we have to help it work and not work against it. So yeah, looking for fiber in those whole grains, fruits and vegetables, and plant-based proteins, the beans, right? Legumes. That's where you're going to get your fiber sources. What we need to limit are all those higher fat, sugar, salt, processed, packaged convenience foods. And Australia did a beautiful study called the SMILES trial that took people that were already diagnosed with depression, and one group got to eat these more whole foods, higher fiber eating, the other group nothing like that. And they showed in their research that they could lower the depression scores just by eating the whole foods diet. So, you know, no more pills and potions. Let's use food as our medicine. That's another old saying that is absolutely true. You have to have that baseline in there. And if you're not, pills and potions in the world may not do what they're supposed to do.
We're hearing more about community gardens and people using community gardens who may not have access to a backyard. So what are your thoughts about using community gardens to help people? Because that also will take us into the role of community coming together in traditions as well.
Right? If you read any old, reminiscences, it's about the gardens and the feasts that communities used to do together. And we've gotten a little bit away from that. COVID shut all that communal eating down. And I really think it did a number on communities, but we're seeing them rise up again. And so a community garden is going to bring people together around growing healthy, high fibered, wholesome, vitamin-filled food. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. And if you don't have a lot of space and don't want to be a part of a big garden, just little container gardens on your balcony or out in your front stoop. It is doable in small areas as well. But if you can be part of one of those big community gardens, you're going to meet new people. You're going to increase the diversity and inclusivity in a community. You're going to swap recipes or create these big potluck feasts and try food you've never tried before. It's just a win-win-win for the community, for you personally, and for your health.
More and more, we're seeing different foods in the grocery stores now, which I think is a wonderful, wonderful adventure. And that has to do with cultural traditions and the ability to explore and have new food adventures. If I was going into a grocery store and didn't even know just seeing something that I thought, gee, that looks interesting, what advice would you give someone who's never tried something before, but their curiosity is piqued?
A few different things you can do. Google it up. My goodness, everything's at our fingertips, and I'm not sure that's the answer to life, but you can at least find answers that you need. So yeah, Google it up. Ask your magic little box how to cook it, how people like it. Or if it's a very culturally specific food, perhaps seek out someone who is from that culture and ask them. People are so gracious around food and happy to share their traditional knowledge. So that to me would be even the more fun aspect, is finding someone who uses it already and share a meal together and learn how to cook it through another human instead of just off of a page on the internet.
Yes, that would be amazingly interesting as well. And you get to meet new people that way as well.
Right? It's the connections. Food brings people together, and that's the bottom line. So much is dividing us and separating us and othering us. If we can use food as one of the few things left to bring people together, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and so important these days. I think that community helped communities survive through COVID. We know the value of community, even though we weren't able to participate the same, but it's an opportunity to build community through food, and we all like it. Cognitive function. Now, you had talked a bit about, obviously, moods and depression. I'm really interested to know more about the cognitive function in food.
Right? And you've probably seen things as superfoods to keep the brain healthy as you age.
Yeah.
The bottom line with most of those is they're full of antioxidants, which keep us healthy throughout our lifespan. So things like blueberries, right? Anything dark colored right through the flesh of the fruit or vegetable is going to have antioxidant property. And those antioxidants protect our cells from becoming damaged. So you don't see any of this happening on the outside, but it's all going on the inside. So that's one thing you probably have heard about. But as far as cognitive performance or function, it starts at such a young age, making those connections, the synapses in the brain. So good nutrition and good personal relationships, loving, caring relationships does that. I think you see it most in the need for our student nutrition programs in the school setting.
Right.
That if children are not fed, well fed, then their brain, which runs on the glucose energy from the food we eat, is not going to be functioning at its best. So then how do you sit in a classroom quietly, pay attention, focus, and learn? You can't if you're hungry and not well fed. So this is something that allows all children access, universal access to nutritious food choices to help fuel them for the day so they can sit and learn and reach their full potential. And for adults in the workplace, same thing. If you're dizzy, lightheaded, hungry, hangry, I think some people call it, you're not going to perform well. You're not going to be at your best. So if you take the time to eat at regular intervals, have some healthy snacks throughout the day, stay well hydrated, another big issue for people, that's going to help you be your best.
Yeah, which is so important. And again, that's from kids going to school to adults who are coping with everything. It's right, as you had said earlier, right across it. Nutrition is for all ages, really, to help. How are dietitians working to help Canadians navigate diet culture? And what exactly is diet culture?
Yeah, great question. And it's certainly becoming more known, but it's a new concept to some. Dietitians traditionally are known to work in hospital basements and make menus for people with disease states, right? Not very exciting, maybe, but really necessary. But we're so much more than that, right? And when you get to the prevention end, it's about helping people recognize things like diet culture or the other pressures that are out there in the world, extraneous forces acting on them that affect how they eat and how they feel about their body. And so diet culture is basically society's unwritten rules about how you should look, what you should eat, and who is healthy and who is not, just by looking at people, which we know is not correct. So helping people recognize that they may be victims of weight bias or weight discrimination, especially in the healthcare setting, unfortunately, also in the education and workplace setting, that people are treated differently based on their body shape, size, and appearance. And again, Australia is leading the way in this department. They've just released a report about appearance ideals and the harm that can cause for people who don't meet those very narrow ideals of what someone should look like. So it's a new way of thinking about health, not so specific to how your body looks, but let's really get to underneath and see the lab values. And if you're truly in need of medical support versus, whoa, just from looking at you, I'm going to judge how healthy you might be. So it's a big discrimination factor, and we need to help people see that is not your fault that society is doing that to you. And how can we help people feel more confident and be competent eaters and allowed to eat a good variety of foods, no matter what the world thinks they should be eating?
That's helpful for me to hear you explain it that way, because even in a workplace setting or even getting employment, there can be a bias based on first impressions, never mind skills that are brought. But when I think about more and more in certain settings, even the choice of chairs that people can sit in now is more inclusive. People can make choices about what chair they need to use. No judgment, no, it's just available to them. And I'm thinking how neat it would be to have those choices in workplace centers all over. We see them in hospital waiting rooms, doctor waiting rooms. Why not other places? Because it is a bias.
Absolutely. And it's so embedded, people don't even know they have it, right? It's one of these implicit biases that we've just all been raised in this world to think this way in these structures and systems that have been created. So it's unlearning, it's undoing, it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, but it needs to happen so that they can understand the harm that it's doing. And I know dietitians in public health, we released a position paper called Towards a More Weight Inclusive Approach in Public Health, because our setting has some very weight centric work as well. And I think the harm has been done for too long, and we need to start undoing that. So, lots of work going on in this area. And we hope someday that people won't have to deal with weight bias and weight discrimination.
It's so interesting to know that there is this sort of transitioning in thought and attitude and culture around weight and no matter where you are on the spectrum, because it can be along the whole spectrum for sure. So we have a couple minutes only left. I can't believe how fast it always goes when I chat to you. What are your thoughts? What would you really like to get forward about the positive impact that dietitians make, and also what you'd like our viewing audience to take away today?
Well, I've been in this nutrition business for about 30 years almost now. And I think the big thing I'd love people to take away is have some fun with your food. It breaks my heart to see people who are either obsessed with or terrified of food, and lots of reasons for that. And those diet culture pressures are a big piece of that. But I would love to see people be able to make friends with food, use it for what it's meant for, bringing people together, enjoying your culture and traditions, and helping your body thrive. So if we could get the world to that place where everyone was happy to share what they had instead of commodifying it and selling it for a big profit, that might be a little bit too utopian, but that's how the world began. We didn't have supermarkets back in the day, right? The supermarket was Mother Nature. And I think people have to reconnect to the land and the waters that supply the food, the animals, and the plants that we eat. And that will take us to a more environmentally sustainable place as well.
Many, many benefits to this. Kathryn, as always, it's a delight to have a conversation with you. I thank you so much. Viewing audience as well, I thank you for joining us. You've been listening to Kathryn Forsyth, who is a dietitian at Grey Bruce Public Health, and we've been talking about nourishing to flourish, or nourish to flourish, which is the theme for March, which is Nutrition Month. Please take care, stay safe, and tune in again to learn more about resources, services, and programs available to you and to your family. Take care.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
You're watching an interesting local show on Rogers TV and you want to know more. That's when you head to rogerstv.com. Our website provides more information about our programs, our hosts, our schedule, and about how you too can get involved with Rogers TV. Visit us online at rogerstv.com.
Are you a passionate content creator ready to expand your audience reach? Do you have unique stories, captivating hobbies, or special interests that deserve a spotlight? Rogers TV is here to amplify your voice within the community. We offer you the platform to broadcast your content to a wider audience.